Hello everyone, my name is Max VDW, and in this tutorial series I will show you how to hook into QA plugin. Now, if you're not familiar with QA plugin, it's a plugin that basically allows you to ask questions and it gives you a response. But it's very intelligent. It hooks into API AI, which is an online framework used by Google and Alexa, Amazon Alexa, to return and parse questions. Now, you can hook into the QA plugin to create your own questions. Those can either be local questions or API questions. And what you can, give responses based on those questions. Now, there are two ways you can hook into the QA plugin. First, let me show you the API documentation. So there are two ways you can hook into the QA plugin. You can hook into the QA plugin from another plugin. For example, you have a rank plugin or a plugin that shows you tiers and you want to create a question to get specific information about your plugin. Um, so if you have a plugin already and you want to create a question to access data in that plugin, I suggest just hooking into QA plugin straight from your own plugin. Now, the second type of hooking into QA plugin is by using modules. So modules are basically plugins for plugins, but since that can be a bit confusing, I just call them modules. So those are individual jar files that you put in the modules folder of the QA plugin, and they are loaded and managed by QA plugin. So it's much smaller, it's easier to compile and use, and it gives the QA plugin more control of what they actually do. We will start by creating those types of modules, and I will show how to create, how to hook into QA plugin from another plugin in a later episode. The first thing we're going to do is create a Maven project and, use the QA plugin as a dependency. So the first thing you should do is download the QA plugin from Spigot. So you have to own the plugin in order to create modules. And once it's downloaded, let's create a Maven project first. So I'm going to use IntelliJ Ultimate in this case, but you can do the same with IntelliJ Community Edition. So just create a Maven project, give it a group ID and artifact ID. I'm just going to stick with my group ID and I'm going to name this project QA plugin module. Um, well, what kind of module should we create? Well, I'm going to create a simple joke return question. So you can ask a question like tell a joke and it returns a question. So I'm going to call it joke simple. I'm going to copy this artifact ID. I'm going to give it the same name as the project ID. And I'm going to create the project. So this series requires you to have some basic knowledge of Java and Maven, but I will explain a few things just to make sure that you understand. Always make sure that you enable auto imports, always handy. And now we just need to reference to the QA plugin we just downloaded. I'm going to put the QA plugin in the resources. It is advised to keep this outside of your project so it's easier to access from other projects as well, and so you don't accidentally upload it because it's a premium plugin and you don't want to upload it somewhere. So I'm going to drag this to my resources. I'm going to just call it QA plugin. And next we're going to reference it in our dependencies. So we'll type dependencies, dependency, give it the group ID, be Maxim VDW, QA plugin. Oh, gave it a bad name. version, well, 1.8.0. Scope, well, it's a system dependency, so system, and then we need to define the path, so it's a system path, project base directory slash source slash main slash resources slash QAPlugin.jar. And now we have the QA plugin as our main reference. So next, well, create a package. You can name this package whatever you want. Usually I just stick with, well, my group ID and, well, my artifact ID, but in this case, I'm just going to call it QABE.maximvdw.QAplugin.modules, just because it's a package name I always use when creating modules. So now we have a package, we need to create our module. So when QAPlugin looks for AI modules, it will search for a class in your jar file that extends AI module. So we're going to create our, well, entry point of our application or of our module. And since this is a module about jokes, I'm just going to call it joke module. Now, as I said, you have to extend AI module. So this is located in package be.maximvdw.QAplugin.api.ai module. Let's give a description. The joke module. Oh. Now, as you can see, there isn't, well, there aren't any abstract methods you have to override. So let's create a constructor just where the constructor will be called when the AI module is loaded. So here we're going to create new questions or create new entities. Well, here we're going to do basically everything the module has to do. Now there are a few things the module needs to know. So it needs a name, an author, a version, a description, and well, you can use constraints, but we're not going to use it in this tutorial. So to do this, you use annotations, and it's very simple. You just add module name. Make sure you use the correct one, and then you just give the name of the module. I'm going to call it jokes. And now you have named your module jokes. We're going to do the same thing with the author, maximvdw, the version, module version. This is version 1.0.0, and we're going to give a description. Let the assistant tell a joke. Okay, so now we have defined that our joke module is named jokes. The author is maximvdw, it's version 1.0.0, and the description is let the assistant tell a joke. And if you if you compile this and put it in your modules folder, it will tell, well, I loaded the module jokes, but it doesn't do anything at this point. So for this first tutorial, I'm going to create a simple tell a joke question. So this is a simple question. It's a local question. There are two types of questions. You have API questions. Those are very advanced questions. You have a lot of control in what they can do. And then you have the kind of questions that are the same when you configure them in the questions.gml file of the plugin. They use the same format with the minimum matches and things like that. So those are the simple questions. And I'm going to create a question like that now. So we start by question, give your question a name, question, it's a new question. You can give it a name. It's not required, but it can be useful for the future when allowing it to be saved and things like that. Uh, but I'm just going to leave the name blank for now. And next we're going to add questions and add answers. These are basically the same things you see in the JML file. You have the questions list and the answers list, and these are basically the same. So if you're not familiar with how the questions are matched, I suggest reading up with the um, plugin page. So at the bottom of the questions.jml, there's a whole section explaining what exactly the metadata is for a question, and same for the answers. And this describes how exactly it works, what the required means, what does this mean, and etc. etc. So I suggest reading this first before or creating your question.yml questions first before starting to create a module. So yeah, we're going to add a question, new question line, and here you put the match. So I want it to match when I tell, for example, tell a, oh, sorry, tell a joke, or make a joke, or tell me a joke. And I could create question lines for all these individual cases. So if I do, for example, tell a joke, just copy paste, tell me a joke, make a joke, it will match when I say those exact phrases or when my phrase contains that exact match. But since you can see joke is always in all of these three questions, tell is in two of them, and well, if I say, for example, tell us a joke, it won't work because it won't match. So I'm going to require joke to be in the question, and it also needs to require either the word tell, make, or do. So you can say do a joke. You don't say that, but well, players on your server usually don't have the best grammar, so well, do a joke isn't for them is normal. So well, joke is required, and it's also a word. So I'm going to set required word. Next, tell. It's also a word. It's required, but there are multiple choices, so I'm going to call it choice. And I'm going to do the same for make, and the same for do as well. So now if I ask tell us a joke, it will match tell, it will match joke, and it will say yes, okay, this is a match. So there are minimum 2 matches, so I'm going to set minimum with minimum matches being 2. So it needs to match 2 of them, one being one of these 3 and the other one being joke. And now we're going to add some answers, and these are actually your jokes. So new answer line, what does Steve to get his exercise? He runs around the block. And yes, I stole that joke, so it's not that I'm very funny or anything. And you just do basically the same thing for all other jokes. So if I have another joke, joke 2, joke 3, and this is a very basic thing. Of course, this looks a bit nasty because you're creating well, new jokes in the constructor of your question. But you can of course do the same thing like this, question, add new answer line, joke 5 for example, If, for example, you have like a file with jokes, you can loop through the lines of that file and add them manually like this. So now we have our question, but it's not registered yet. So we created the question object, but that doesn't mean the question is already added. So to register it, you can either do QAPlugin API dot add question question, or if you want if you're lazy, you can just do question dot register, which is actually way cleaner. And now we have our module ready. So this module is ready to go. If we compile it and place the jar file in, I'm going to remove this import, and if we place the jar file in our modules folder, it will actually work. So we're going to test that now. So I compiled the module with Maven and put it in my modules folder. And when I load the when I load the server now, you will see that QAPlugin says loaded EI action jokes by Max and VDW. And these are the two annotations you put here, so you know they are parsed and they actually work. Now, as you can see, I changed this a bit. So what I did, I added some real jokes and I put the register method over here so it looks a bit cleaner. If I go to my server, I have to log in and ask the bot, tell a joke. It will randomize a joke, randomize an answer that I put to use as the answer. So it will just pick a joke randomly. Now, if you have a few lines or a few jokes, this is cool, but I think you can understand that, for example, when you have a lot of answers, or you want to get a dynamic answer based on, for example, an API or something, you will need something else. And for that, we have a dynamic response. You just do with dynamic response is new dynamic response. And this basically is a response. This basically creates an interface or a method that is called every time the question is asked. But as you can see, I don't have bucket as a dependency yet. So to do this in Maven, just go to the Spidget Maven wiki page, copy the repository in dependency, and you're good to go. So repository here. Dependency, we don't need the Spidget API, we just need the bucket API. I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to make a space between here, okay. And now we have our bucket API imported. So we can just import this player. Okay, that's fixed. Now, I thought it would be fun to use an API to get a joke. So I searched for an API and I found this Chuck Norris jokes. It basically returns a JSON string with in the value parameter of the JSON response, it gives you the joke. So I'm going to be creating, I'm going to fetch that joke from the API. I'm going to put it in the try catch because, a lot of things can go wrong when you're contacting an API. And if this returns an URL, this method, the question will be empty. But I suggest from a usability perspective to always return a response, even if it's just something went wrong. So I'm going to log the error in the console, and I'm going to return a new answer line that makes the bot say, hey, something went wrong. Now we're going to create a URL request. So URL like this is new URL. This is the API. URL open connection. It creates a URL connection. So your connection is URL open connection. I think they may in the future block some user agents or empty user agents. So I'm just setting my user agents to something. Um, I think Mozilla 5.0 should do fine. This is basically so I don't get blocked by the API. And then we need to read the output, so I should use a buffered reader, I guess. Reader is no buffered reader, and use the input stream from the connection. Get input, no, input stream. Like this. What am I doing wrong? It's new buffered reader. No, it's not buffered reader, it's a buffered stream, input stream. What am I doing, Maxim? What am I doing? Okay. And then our input line will be, or output line, what? A response JSON string. Oh, that's too long. Response source is reader dot read line. No. Reader. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Let me check. I think this should be able to read line, wasn't I? Reader dot read. Maybe I should use buffered reader. I think I could use buffered reader, and then it should give me a read line. Yes, it read line. So I'm using this wrong. What is the argument for a buffered reader? You don't have to know these things by head. You just try an error, or you just Google it. It has an input, new input stream reader. Okay, this should work. Get input stream. Okay, this should work. Next, we should try to parse it. So JSON parser, parser is a new JSON parser. Okay, the arg.json I'm using for this is included in the bucket API, so you don't have to shade it or anything. Next, we're going to get our JSON object. So our object will be whatever we parse from our response source. Let's cast it. If this, well, let's cast it. And if the object contains key value, we should return that value. So return new answer line, object get value, and cast this to a string. Else, well, something went wrong, so we say something went wrong. What am I forgetting here? Well, I think I should better close the stream. Oh, close the stream, because else we're going to have a memory leak for each question. And we should probably also close it when something fails with the parsing. But yeah, just for a simple test, this should be fun. So what this hopefully will do, because I haven't tested it, it will contact the API with the user agent Mozilla 5.0. It will read the output stream or the input stream, whatever it returns, and parse this to our and parse this and check if there is a value, return that value, which is our joke. So if we build this, so I'm going to compile it. This should be compiled by now. Yes. And we stop our server because we need this here. Start our server again. I'm using a very old build, but well, since this is a very I don't use this test server a lot, so it's okay. But if you're Creating a real server, always use an up-to-date server jar. But this will take some time. So let's reflect on what exactly we did. So the questions are still the same. This is still, it will still respond to tell a joke, tell us a joke, or whatever. Same with the minimum matches. But instead of all those responses, those predefined responses, we now create a dynamic response. And this dynamic response returns whatever you want. And in this case, it will return the result of an API. And it's also fired async, so you don't have to worry about lagging your server when contacting an API or something. This is all async. This also means that things you do here are not thread safe. So if, for example, you want to get a block or chunk from a world, you have to put, you can't do this. So yeah, I think it should be loaded by now. Yeah, it's loaded. The error is from another plugin, so don't mind that. And if we ask bot tell us a joke, it will tell us a Chuck Norris joke thing. Tell us a joke, hopefully. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. July 4th is Independence Day and the day Chuck Norris was born. Coincidence? I think not. And we can try this again. It seems very slow, the API, but well, nevertheless, the TPS is still fine because it's async. So this is basically like, well, make a joke, but just to prove that it can detect other types of questions. Oh, that's a bit an as if we joke. Well, anyway, we created dynamic response. It works. So yeah. Next episode, I will be creating an API question. Those are actually those are very advanced questions. It will also be divided in several episodes because it's something I can't put in one episode. So yeah, hopefully see you next time, and good luck programming.